Now let's see some useful stuff that you can use with the command line interface. And this includes globbing characters, different kinds of quotes or quoting, and control statements. Globbing characters are very useful to match sets of files or directories. And there are several globbing characters. The first one is the star character, this one. And this one allows you to match 0 or more of any characters. So for example, if we say echo, and then within the directory /etc, so we want to display all the file names that starts with a T, and then followed by any sequence of characters. It can be 0 characters or 1 or 2 or any number of characters, right? So in this case, if I do this, it will display all the file names within the directory /etc that starts with a T and then followed by anything, right? So for example, this one, it starts with a T and then followed by a sequence of any number of characters, right? So this matches this globbing character, the star, right? Same thing for this one. It starts with a T, and this one also starts with a T. Okay, so here we are looking for all the file names within the directory /etc that starts with a T, and they are followed by any sequence of characters, right? I can take another example. For example, let's say again within the directory /etc, we are looking for all file names that starts with R, for example, and then followed by any sequence of characters, and then let's say that they end with .conf, right? So we are looking for all the file names within the directory /etc, and we want those files to start with R and end with .conf. And between R and .conf, we have any sequence of characters. It can be 0 characters, or 1 or 2, or any number of characters, right? So for example, we get resolve.conf, it starts with R and ends with .conf, right? This one starts with R and ends with .conf. Same thing, starts with R, ends with .conf. Okay? So again, the star globbing character allows us to match 0 or more of any characters. Okay? The second globbing character I wanted to talk about is the question mark, this one. And this one allows you to match exactly one of any characters. So for example, if I type echo /etc, and then, well, let's use the previous globbing character, the star. So we want all the files within /etc that they starts with anything, and then dot, and then let's use this, right? So here what we are saying is we want to display the file names of all the files within the /etc directory, and we want those files to have a dot, so they start with anything, right? Any sequence of characters, then dot, then any characters, but just one character, and then another one character, and then another one character. Okay, so here we want all the file names that ends with dot and then 3 characters, right? So basically we want all the file names within /etc that have an extension of 3 characters. So for example, we get this file because it ends with .key. So here we have one character that matches the first question mark, um, another one that matches the second question mark, another one that matches the third question mark. Okay, so basically the question mark matches exactly one character. It can be any character, but just one character. Okay, same thing here. .ini, .net, .gen, .config, CFG. So 3 characters. Okay, so again, the star globbing character allows you to match 0 or any sequence of characters, right? Several characters. But the question mark allows you to match only one character. Okay? And the third one that I want to talk about is this. So you have those 2 brackets, right? Here. and then in between you can put any characters. So let's say A, U, G, whatever, F, for example. So if we write this, this means that we want to match either A or U or G or F. So we want to match one of those characters. Okay, so let's take an example. So if I write, for example, again, echo, and I want to display all the file names within the directory /etc, and I want them to start with either G or U, and then followed by any sequence of characters, right? It can be 0 characters or any number of characters, okay? But I want the file name to start with either G or U, right? So this part here will match a G or a U character, right? So we get those results. So here within the directory /etc, we have all those files. So gain.conf, so it starts with a G, right? So it matches this expression here, okay? This one also starts with a G. This one starts with a U, so it matches this, right? And so on. Okay, so here we have, we want to print any file that begins with either G or U and contains 0 or more additional characters. Um, Now let's take another example, and this time let me just do this. A to D. So here we can specify a range. So instead of writing A, B, C, D here, I can write the range from A to D. So this includes all the letters between A and D, right? So A, B, C, and D, okay? And this expression allows us to actually print all the files that begin with any letter between A and D, okay? So if we do this, we get any file within this directory that starts with A or B or C or D, right? So this one starts with a C, this one C, this one with a D, right? So only the files that starts with either A or with B or with C or with D, okay? Let's take another example. And this time let me write this. So echo /etc again, and then I want the file name to start with anything, right? So I put start, and I want it also to end with anything, but in the middle I want it to have at least one number. So from 0 to 9. So this will match this part here will match any character that is 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 until 9, right? So what we are doing here with this command is we want to display or print any file name that contains at least one number, okay? It can start with anything and end with anything, but in the middle or at the end or at the beginning, it should have at least one number, okay? So here we have this one, it has one number, so it matches this part here. This one ends with a 2, right? So this start here matches this part, right? And then 0 to 9, this part matches 2, and then start matches nothing, right? Because we said that the start can match 0 characters or any number of characters, right? So here it matches 0 characters, nothing, and so on, right? So all those files contains at least one number. Now, what if we want to display some file names that does not contain some character? So for example, what if I want to display any file that does not begin with D or P, for example? So let me write this. So we have echo, and then um, in my current directory, let me display any file that does not start with P or D, right? And then it is followed by any sequence of characters. So when I use this here, um, this exclamation mark, then this means that I want to match any character except those two here, except D and P, right? So this part here matches any character except D and P. So we are looking for all the files that does not start with D or P, and they are followed by any sequence of characters. So in my case, here it displays all those files here. This one does not start with D or P, so it's fine. This one also, this one also, and this one also. Okay. So this exclamation mark here represents the negation, right? We want all the characters, but not D and not P. Great, so this is about globbing. Now let's talk a little bit about quoting. We have different kinds of quotes. So we have the double quotes, right? Those quotes that you see here, double quotes. We have the single quotes, those ones, right? And we have something called back quotes, those ones here, right? Those are called back quotes. So let's start by talking a little bit about the double quotes, right? Those ones. So the double quotes are used to disable the meaning of some meta characters, like for example the globbing characters that we saw previously. So for example, let me take this example here. So we have echo /etc and then np start. So here I want to display all the file names within /etc, and I want the file names that starts with either N or P, capital letter N or capital letter P, right? And then followed by any sequence of characters. So I get those two. This one starts with an N, and this one starts with the P, okay? Now, what if I want to actually, instead of displaying those file names, I want to actually display this as it is, exactly as it is. So basically, I want to disable the meaning of those globbing characters. I don't want to interpret them as globbing characters. I just want to display them as they are to the screen. So I want to display this bracket, this one, and this star, right? So to do this, we can use those double quotes. So I can put this between those double quotes here. And what happens is that all this will be displayed as it is. Okay? So what happened here is that we disabled the meaning of those globbing characters. Okay? So the double quotes are used to disable the meaning of any globbing characters, right? Now let's talk a little bit about the single quotes. But before doing this, let's check if those double quotes actually allows us to disable the meaning of some other characters, like the $sign that we saw previously with variables. So for example, let me just first um, give you an example. So echo path, or let's say, um, well, home is, and then this, right? Or let me just, to avoid confusion, just write the home directory is this, right? So if I do this, so it will display the home directory is /home/Rafik, because it interprets this as a variable called home, right? And here, since we are using the $sign, we are trying to access the content of this variable. And the content of this variable is /home/Rafik, right? So those double quotes, um, they don't allow us to disable the meaning of this $sign, right? So what if we want to actually display all this as it is? Instead of displaying /home/Rafik here, I want to actually display $home as it is here. So to do this, we can use the single quotes, because as you see, the double quotes doesn't work in this case, right? They don't disable the meaning of this $sign. But we can use the single quotes to do this. So if I use the single quotes instead of the double quotes, then you'll see that, yeah, all this is displayed as it is, right? So we disabled the meaning of this dollar sign. So we are not anymore saying that we want to access the content of the variable home. We're just saying that, yeah, we want just to display this as it is, right? There is another way to disable the meaning of this dollar sign. So if instead of using the double or the single quotes, we use just this slash. This slash allows us to disable the meaning of just one character, right? The character which comes after the slash, in this case, this dollar sign, right? If we do this, yeah, it will give us the same result. So the home directory is /home, but I prefer using those single quotes. Okay, I can take another example. So for example, I create a variable called cost, right? This is not an environment variable, it's just a variable that I created, right? So it contains this value. And then if I display echo, the rent cost is $cost, right? If I do this, then we get the rent cost is this. So this number, we want to access the actual content of the cost variable, right? Now, if you try to display dollar cost as it is, not its content, but you use the double quotes, then it doesn't work, right? It still interprets dollar cost as the content of the variable cost. But if you use the single quote, then it works, right? And if you use the backslash to disable the meaning of this dollar sign, then it works, right? It is displayed exactly as it is. Now, the third kind of quotes is called the backquotes. And the backquotes are used to execute a command within another command line. So for example, let me just take the command date. This is a very simple command. So if you type the command date, it is executed and it just displays the current date, right? It gives you the current date. Now, if I type echo, today is date, right? So for example, what I want, oh, sorry. So here I should write echo. So echo, today is date. So what I want to display is today is, and then I want to actually execute the command date, and I want this to be displayed, right? But if I do this, it will just display, well, today is date. It doesn't consider that date here is a command that needs to be executed. Instead, it just considers that date is just some text that you want to display, right? Now what we can do is to use the backquotes in order to tell it that date is actually a command that needs first to be executed. So if you put date between those backquotes, right, then what happens is that first this is considered as a command, so it is executed and its result is replaced here, right? So what we will get at the end is today is, and then the actual date, right? So we can do this with any other command. So for example, um, the content um, of this directory is, and then I want the result of the command ls, right? So I just put ls between backquotes so that it is executed as a command, right? So I get the content of this directory is, and then ls is executed, right? And the result of the ls command is replaced here, right? So I get those files and directories. So that's it for quoting. Now let's talk a little bit about some other useful stuff. And this is basically control statements. We have basically three kinds of control statements. So the first one is this semicolon character, this one, right? Um, So if we separate two or multiple comments by this, they are executed sequentially. So for example, let me take a comment, let's say the calendar of January 2019, and then the calendar of February 2019, and then calendar of March 2019. So these are three different comments. This is one, this is another comment, and this is another comment. And they are separated by this semicolon, right? So when we do this, this means that we want first to execute this, and then this, and then this. So all three comments are executed, right? One after the other, or sequentially. So we get the result of the first command, followed by the result of the second command, followed by the result of the third command. Okay? So these are executed sequentially. You can have, for example, also, let's say ls, followed by pwd, followed by whatever, echo hello world, right? And so on. You can have any number of comments here, but they are executed sequentially. First this, then this, right? So we get the result of the first one, the ls, and then the result of pwd, print working directory, and then the result of echo hello world, right? Now there is another kind of control statements using this character that you see here, right? So if I have two comments separated by this means this is used to execute the second command if the first one succeeds. So let me show you an example. So if I write, for example, ls and then let's say /etc xml. So this is a directory. I want to display its content. And then I want to add another command, for example, just echo success, right? So I have two commands. This is the first command, and this is the second command. And they are separated by this character. So this means that I want the second command to be executed only if the first one succeeds, right? So if this is a directory that exists and this command lists its content successfully, then this one will be executed. Let's do this. So what happens is that the first command is executed. So we see its result here. It is successfully executed. Therefore, the second command has been executed, right? So we see its result here. Okay. But let's try to make a command here instead of this one, which actually fails. So let me try to um, display the content of some directory that doesn't exist. For example, let me just call it junk, right? I don't have such a directory. It doesn't exist, right? So the first command, this one, will fail. Therefore, the second command should not be executed. So let's try this, right? So here what happens is that the first command fails, so we get an error. It is just saying that there is no such file or directory. So the first command fails. Therefore, the second command hasn't been executed, right? So we don't see success printed here. Okay. So if you want to execute some command only if the first one succeeds, then you separate them by using this control statement or this character here. Now the final control statement that I want to show you is actually the inverse of this one, right? It does the inverse thing, right? Or it has the inverse effect. So basically it is this character here. So this is used to execute the second command only if the first one fails, right? So if I have, let's say ls and then same thing, let's try to display the content of this directory. And then I have another command, let's just display failed, right? So here I have a command and I have a second command, and they are separated by this this control statement or this character here, right? So this actually means that The second command will only be executed if the first one fails. Let's try this example and see what happens. So in this case, this command is executed. So we see its result here. It is executed successfully. It didn't fail. Therefore, the second one is not executed, right? So we don't see failed here. Okay. But if the first one fails, so for example, let me just try to list the content of some directory that doesn't exist, junk. So this one will fail. Therefore, the second command will be executed. So let's see. Yes. So the first command did not succeed. Therefore, the second one has been executed, right? And why is this? It's because we are using this control statement. So this is kind of the reverse of this one.